So, hello everyone. Welcome to our Inspiring Thoughts podcast. We're really lucky today to have Amanda Nicholls from HR Solve It. Great to have you on board, Amanda.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, Stephen. I'm really looking forward to today.
No, really excited. I'm really chuffed, and I know you've got a busy schedule, so it's great to have you on board
Yes.
for our podcast. So today we're really going to start to look about transforming HR. What's it look like in the future? So I'm asking Amanda to give her views as a HR consultant, independent, about actually where the future could go for HR move forward. Like with all the colleagues we work with on our podcast, Amanda's had 7 questions in advance, just so that we can get that preparation and that rich kind of energy from Amanda. So before we start today, Amanda, would you give people just an overview of your career history?
Yeah, of course. So I've been in HR, gosh, about 25 years. So a fairly long time, and it's changed quite a lot over those years. I started off working for a charity for members who had learning disabilities and mental health problems. I then moved into the NHS as a generalist HR. I was there, I don't know, about 7 years or so. Then I moved over into local government. I was head of HR in local government for quite a period of time. And then it was quite an exciting change. The authority I worked for teamed up with a number of other local authorities, and we offered a shared HR service, which I think was quite new and innovative at the time. So that was very exciting. And then the latter part of that, I worked for a theatre art, so worked in the arts, which was quite strange and challenging during the COVID period, because of course for theatres to go dark was really unheard of. So there was lots of challenges and ways forward for that. And then 2 years ago, I set up my own business as a HR consultant and haven't looked back. It's absolutely flown by. So yes.
Oh, fantastic. And what made you get into the HR world?
I kind of fell into it, I think.
Yeah.
Didn't know what to do when I went to university. So I thought I'll do business studies, kind of generic. It left doors open. And then I can remember you could major in accountancy, marketing, or HR. No good at marketing, not great with figures. So kind of HR, kind of fell into HR. And I thought, actually, I love working with people. But the irony is actually being in HR, that can actually be a real challenge, because sometimes you're put in quite awkward situations that it's not what you would expect when you first start your HR career, that it's going to be very easygoing and very supportive, and it is, but there's certainly some challenges along the way.
Yeah, there's some enormous challenges. People I've come across in my career, that HR can be fighting fires, those kind of things as well. So it's not, as you said, that nice easy way to go into. It's a very challenging job to go into in the HR world, isn't it?
Yeah, you want that supportive side, because that's what you go in for, but you don't always able to deliver that on a day-to-day basis, as you say. It's that firefighting and the awkward things that perhaps sometimes line managers don't want to deal with.
Yes, yeah, and everyone that listens to the podcast know that this is like my Braveheart speech that I go, that leaders can't take the paycheck just for the good times.
Absolutely.
They have to take the pay for those people issues, and that rather than subcontract to HR for them to resolve the issue. That's one of my Braveheart speeches there, Amanda.
I could not agree more, but the reality is somewhat different. I've seen over the years.
Yes.
Not always, but predominantly, I would say yes.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, and probably when I was back in the bank, I might have been one of those naughty sausages that may have moved to the HR world to say, could you deal with my problems and that kind of stuff. So I can talk from both sides of the fence, if that makes sense.
And to be honest, I can see why they do, because HR are always there to help out. So why wouldn't you, really?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Now, I also, Amanda doesn't know that I'm going to ask this question, but I saw on LinkedIn recently about your running as well.
Yes.
So would you tell us more about that? So
I started running about 10 years ago. So never liked any form of sport in my 20s, early 30s.
Yeah.
And then I thought, after I had my second child, so I really should get fit, lose some weight, the old cliche. Yeah. So I thought, I'll apply for London Marathon. Well, 11 years later, I've never got into the London Marathon. But running's kind of my happy place. It's my well-being. I can just get my trainers on and go out the door. And probably, as you saw last week, I ran my 8th marathon last week. So it's been a while. It's been 5 years since my last one. So but that really is my go-to for clarity and peace of mind.
Yeah, and it's really good. So like for me, I took up cycling. So I used to do running a lot, but took up cycling from that perspective. But it's just good to get out, clear the mind, thinking time, those kind of things.
Absolutely.
It's amazing what it can do to you, and that like hits of dopamine through our body just makes us feel better, doesn't it?
I think so, and I think sometimes I think, oh, I really should go for a run. But as you say, that feeling when you finish, like, I'm really glad I went out. I'm so lucky
Yeah.
living on the coast. The scenery is
Yes.
just beautiful. To go
Yeah.
and run along the beach, well, not on the beach, but by the beach is lovely.
Yeah. Yeah. And Amanda and I don't live too far away from each other, so we both live on the coast. So we're both very lucky
Yes,
from that
very much so.
perspective. Yeah. So going into HR for the future, we know HR, and from a consultancy point of view, sometimes piggy in the middle, those kind of things where they get involved can be kind of quite strong cases or complex. So how
Yes.
can HR consultants prepare for the future? What would you say in
Um,
your mind? How could they prepare?
I think, to be honest, I think we all knew the world of work had to change. And I
Yeah.
think with the pandemic, to a certain extent, Brexit before, there was a huge momentum, and I think things picked up. And it has been a huge roller coaster for HR. And I
Yeah.
think it's made us become more resilient. And I think it's made us stand out more, that we need to be an integral part of the business rather
Yes.
than a bolt on.
Yeah.
I think we really did stand our ground during the pandemic. We had to learn so much so
Yeah.
quickly, waiting for those press releases each week, then trying to translate actually what we
Yeah.
needed to do for the companies.
Yeah.
So I think it gave us a better platform.
Yeah.
But I think the shift is going to be about how we understand businesses moving forward. So
Yeah.
it's not being so reactive. It's about being proactive. Obviously, the
Yes.
business will want to know, well, how does that affect our bottom line? What's in it for us? How does
Yeah.
it help our pain points? But I think for us, it's kind of staying informed about industry trends. What are the key trends that are happening?
Yeah.
Looking, of course, about that HR technology that's coming through. Everybody's talking about AI, automation, how
Yeah.
that's not only going to affect us within HR, but how it's going to affect the businesses that we support.
Yeah.
People are saying, is it going to change roles? Is it going to remove some roles, and how we support that? And I think there's going to be a lot more focus on data driven HR.
Yeah.
So learning about how we analyze the data, how we actually predict for the future. So I think historically
Yeah.
we've always looked at data as, well, what's happened.
Yes. Yeah.
Whereas now I think we need to move that to, well, what is going to happen? What are going to be the trends? How can we feed that into a HR strategy, if you like? Because
Yes.
as we know, businesses always have a business strategy, but they don't always think about, well, what's the people plan that needs to sit behind and drive that.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
think at the time when they just go to implement that, it's like, well, actually, what do we need? Where we need to be thinking quite some time before to make sure there's a
Yeah.
smoother transition. So I think it's more about how we position ourselves with businesses to
Yes.
make sure we're at the forefront of any thoughts, any decisions, rather
Yeah.
than being on the back foot, I think.
Yeah. And I really like a couple of things that you said there. So I think definitely during the pandemic, HR, had to deal with a hell of a lot of stuff very quick, very agile, and work
Yeah.
with the colleagues and the organization. And I love the bit there about rather being reactive, HR of the future has to be proactive to complement the business, work with it. What can they see for the future
Mm.
rather than it's happened, what do we do about it? So I think that's definitely where I've seen, and another couple of business owners I've spoken to recently on one of the podcasts, Gavin Howarth was talking about future looking as HR and being
Yeah.
its own business and complementing the business rather than if something goes wrong, we go to HR. Would that make sense?
No, absolutely, and I think I've sort of experienced that in the last couple of years. The shift in change when talking with business owners, with CFOs, it is about the integral side of it rather than HR's being done to them. They actually see
Yes.
the value that you're providing and how that affects what they're doing, rather than,
Yeah.
as you say, just the reactive, oh, we need to get that sorted, so we'll bring
Yeah.
somebody in to sort that out. So it certainly is a shift. I think there's still quite a way to go. And I
Yeah.
think as an industry, it's something we've been pushing for a long time.
Yeah.
But I think the last few years, where there's been such a quick succession of change and we've had to react so quickly, it's
Yeah.
given us a stronger platform to drive that forward.
Yeah. And it's also, I think, where you touched on there as well about AI, technology, data driven, those kind of things of futurizing are going to be a key part to support organizations. And whether we like AI or we don't like AI, those kind of things, it's there. So it's how we
Absolutely.
embrace it and work with those things. And I've noticed from kind of my perspective working with clients, I'm stretching myself to use more technology to really help with training sessions, with mediations, those kind of things, conflict resolution. And it's making a huge difference because people see that you're a bit more modern, agile, those kind of things, rather than always
Absolutely.
staying in your traditional ways. Would you see that as well, Amanda?
You know, I totally agree with you, and I think it's trying to find the right balance.
Yes.
And as you say, with the AI and the automation, it has a place, but it's about how it's introduced into the business,
Yeah.
how staff adapt to it, because people are going to be nervous about, well, is that going to impact on my role? Am I going to
Yeah.
have a role? Um, Maybe I'm being slightly naive, but in my mind, I truly believe that yes, it will take an element of some people's roles away from them. But as a business, it gives you an opportunity to redevelop those roles for those individuals and
Yes.
to give them different responsibilities. Now,
Yeah.
whether that's a sideways step within a role, it doesn't automatically mean somebody has to move up in a role, but it does
Correct.
give more opportunities for those staff members to help drive the
Yes.
business forward, because it
Yeah.
releases them to focus more time
Yeah.
on other things that perhaps historically they just wouldn't have had the capacity to deal
Yeah.
with. But it's taking that bigger picture and that different mindset to look at
Yes.
that, rather than automatically thinking, well, something's been taken away with me, and that panic mode that we all have
Yes.
when something's
Yeah.
taken away, but actually to see the positives that could be made available.
Well, that's the bit of I think going back to a quote from Charles Darwin, and I'll just paraphrase, but talking about adaptable to change, not always the strongest of person that survives. It's about change. And if you think the ages we've gone through, like the industrial age, technology age, farming age, people have had to adjust and adapt through time, haven't they? It hasn't stood still, has it?
No, it hasn't, and I think this is where when I speak to MDs and CFOs, it's so important about that comms and engagement.
Yes.
Communication is so important. I think sometimes because we think communication is just a natural part of what we do, things get missed along the way.
Yeah.
And by being very, very open about
Yeah.
what you're planning on doing can help alleviate some of those concerns that people are feeling with the changes in technology that are
Yeah.
coming along. Looking
Yeah.
about how you engage with staff can
Yes.
really help stop those fears in their tracks.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, sometimes that does get forgotten along the way.
Yeah. And it's one of those ones that human beings, if they don't know an answer or not given the answer, they fill the gap. We fill the
Mm,
gap with something else. So if people aren't being communicated to, they go, well, this is what I think from my experience, and fill it with their own views. And that's where you usually get people run off in
absolutely.
different directions that are probably not true. So that communication part, I think, is super, super important. And the bit is people can choose to ignore it, but at least you've been proactive to communicate with your teams and staff.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the other things we're going to see moving forward, is that real emphasis on the employee experience. Historically, well, kind of many moons ago, it was job for life, and things have changed so much now. People do
Yeah.
move roles, but it's about how we create that positive employee experience.
Yes.
We all know at the moment, to attract and retain top talent is so crucial. Post Brexit, um, it has been difficult to fill roles,
Yeah.
and you invest so much time and money in the recruitment process, you don't then want to lose your best
Yes.
talent.
Yeah.
But I do harp on quite a lot about sort of that we spend so much on what our image looks like as an organisation. But it's about how you're perceived as an employer.
Yes.
So your reputation will precede you.
Yeah.
And when people see an advertisement for a particular organisation, they will probably already know before they even open up that advertisement for information whether they wish to apply
Yeah.
for that company or not. And
Yes.
I think sometimes there's more that organisations can do about their employer branding so
Yeah.
that they do stand out
Yeah.
compared to their competitors.
Yeah. And it's
Um,
not, if we look at recent generations, Amanda, it's not all about money. Money's there. So if
Absolutely
you took
not.
my generation, it was what do you get paid and then move on. Whereas now it's about culture, inclusivity, engagement. Those kind of things are super, super important, which people
Absolutely.
have got to go, people have got to change how they are. And I come from an industry, from the banking industry, that outside it would look all glossy, shiny, but then certain branches we had, colleague staff rooms were atrocious, they were terrible. It was more like an afterthought rather than actually we put our colleagues at the forefront. Those kind of things have got to change, haven't they?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, as you say, some of those things are really simple steps
Yeah,
that the organisation can take. But I think because they are so simple, that as I said before, they
yeah,
are forgotten.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, I think another part of that is looking at work-life balance. And
yes,
I know we've spoken about the pandemic a little while ago, but I think it gave people an opportunity to
yeah,
see a different way of approaching
yeah,
work and life. And for some people, they were desperate to get back to the office
yes,
after COVID. Absolutely understand that. But there were other people who actually found that they worked a lot better
yeah,
working from home or working within a different environment to the office environment.
yeah,
And it's working with the organisation to see how that they can maintain that right balance between the
yes,
team.
yeah,
And what I was saying to one organisation the other week was around, well, when you're looking to advertise new roles, you really need to be honest about how flexible
yes,
you can actually be. Don't say
yeah,
that you're a flexible employer, that you can offer X, Y, and Z, when
yeah,
in reality, you're not actually able to deliver that at the moment,
yeah,
because you're going to get that new member of staff on board. They're going to expect one thing, and then actually, when you can't deliver it,
yeah,
they may not wish to stay. And then you've invested
yeah,
all that time, money in the recruitment, in the
yeah,
onboarding process, the training, etc., 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 for them to then leave because what you sold them isn't actually what you're able to support. You're better off being honest about what you can
yes,
offer. And then those particular candidates can decide if they wish to apply or
yeah,
not for that type of working
yeah.
environment. It's not a wrong
But I think
environment. It's just about matching the right
yeah.
candidates with the right business.
But also as well, Amanda, about, and we're already going on to the next question, which is beautiful. It's about how the HR departments and how do they look for the future, and also organisations. Be honest with people; they will see through it. Treat them like adults.
Absolutely.
Stop the transactional analysis of parent-child relationship, because people will go, "That's not what you told me," and then they'll go and tell other people. So it's that culture that kind of that destroys from that point of view. And also, I mean, ACAS quote, I think for the 0 to 6 months, it costs about £25,000
Yeah.
aid to recruit and then up skill a colleague, 25 to 26,000.
Yes.
That's what you're jeopardizing as well. So your brand image, retention, and then also profitability. So they're the kind of things that are really, really important. Are there any other things that you think like a HR department would look like in the future? I know we touched on loads of things there. Is there anything else that you
Um,
think that how HR departments could look in the future?
do you know what? I do wonder whether departments will become more leaner.
Yeah.
I think, with the increase in AI and automation, that will certainly help with some of the administrative tasks on recruitment, whether that's onboarding, payroll, etc. But I do wonder with some organisations whether it will become leaner and they will buy in additional
Yes.
resources for particular projects. So
Yeah.
I can imagine they'll be forging stronger links with external consultants like myself
Yes.
to buy in that expertise as and when needed.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think that will be interesting to see how
Yeah.
that rolls out. I don't think that will work for all
Yes.
businesses, but I think there will be some. And I think it's about promoting an agile and flexible
Yeah.
workforce, which we've
Yeah.
already touched upon, and of course the gig economy as well, and about adapting the practices within the HR department to make sure that they have the right processes in place to engage and manage those non-traditional
Yes.
employees more effectively. Because if
Yeah.
you've got a lot of consultants, it is a different type of relationship than
Yeah.
to having, I say normal, but to have the employee structure
Yeah.
that you're more used to, which is where you were saying earlier about how you deal with staff and those relationships, and having
Yeah.
a more adult approach to
Yes.
things. And
Yeah.
whilst we need to have processes, policies in place, it's about the language we use and how we make sure they're instilled in everything
Yeah.
that we do.
Yeah.
And that needs to trickle down from the top as a cultural
Yeah.
element. So no
Yeah.
point saying that you adopt flexible working throughout the organisation, but the MD, CFO, etc., are there from 7 in the morning till goodness knows
Yes.
what time in the evening, Monday to Friday, never take any
Yeah.
annual leave. You're going to have other people in the organisation really nervous about asking for a flexible working request
Yeah.
or wanting to flex their time if they want to be seen to grow with that business. If
Yeah.
the top strategic management board aren't
Yes.
echoing what they say their team can do. So,
Yeah. And it's first of all, I love the plug there, Amanda, about external consultants coming in. I thought that's a
of
really good
course,
plug.
of
It's very
course.
subtle, but I liked it. I did like it. But I think the other bit we've noticed that over the last year with L&D. So
Mm,
with L&D functions shrinking down, going to more external consultants, it's people don't realise how much more it can be cost effective to
yeah.
by doing it that way. The other bit is it's a third view, not your organizational's view. So actually bringing a different dimension to it. But I'm definitely seeing more and more organizations, probably HR getting leaner, but then going to that third party to say your expertise, your advice, and also that more niche work of what do you specialize in? Can I bring you in for that period of time, then take somebody else? I'm definitely seeing some good organizations adapting to those third parties coming in. So I just echo your thoughts as well. So really good. So let's go on to our next question. So what skills do you think HR consultants need for the future?
So obviously all the skills we've already had from the past, but I think one
Yeah.
of the key things is, as you just alluded to as well, it's about that flexibility,
Yeah.
about having that diverse set of skills, that
Yeah.
toolkit that you can flex depending upon what the business needs. But I think as a consultant, what I've realised, which is probably slightly different to the answer to this question, is there are a lot of HR consultants out there.
Yeah.
But what I've experienced in the last 2 years is everybody is so supportive of each other.
Yes.
It's not a cutthroat industry such as other industries. People are there to
Yeah.
help each other. And actually, if you're approached by your client to do something, and perhaps it's not necessarily your area
Yeah.
of expertise, there's somebody else that you know that
Yes.
can help and that you can pull them in so
Yeah.
that that business is getting exactly what they need, but you're just having those different
Yeah.
areas to pull upon. I think the IT side, as you say, around the
Yeah.
data analytics, etc., is something that we need to
Mm.
keep on top of. AI and how that can be used.
Yeah.
Change management, of course, is something we always need to be on top of our
Yeah.
game, whether that's acquisitions, transformation within the organisation, TUPE, just keeping abreast of that. And I think, to be honest, it's about that strategic thinking, working out
Yeah.
how the business can see the benefits of HR
Yes.
rather than just that transactional side.
Yeah.
It's about how we can home in on those skills to show them the advantages of thinking longer term about their
Yeah.
team. Because
Yeah.
one of the things I'm very passionate about is, you're, especially with smaller businesses that I tend to work with, your team is your shop window
Yes.
for your business. Your team are the first point of contact for your
Yeah.
customers. So it's about making sure that they've got the right skills so that your customers want to come back, that your customers
Yeah.
recommend, etc., etc. And it's placing that importance on the development of the
Yeah.
team, which I think is where our skills come in the future, about how we
Yeah.
can do that, how we can help them with their communication, our influencing skills, looking at employee engagement,
Yeah.
and just kind of how we can then build on the foundations of that to strengthen the teams that they have to deliver an excellent
Yeah.
service so that they can grow. And I think one of the other big things which we haven't touched on yet is around conflict resolution and mediation.
Yeah.
Because I think as things change, some people are going to feel very vulnerable about
Yeah.
changes. As we alluded to earlier, there are going to be some managers that perhaps don't always deal with things in the best possible way.
Yeah.
And as such, we may see an increase in types of grievances that come in
Yes.
around how things are done. And it's about how that is managed, because
Yeah.
the ultimate goal is to get everybody working together, moving forward. And I think
Yeah.
traditionally with grievances, I don't think anybody ever won.
No.
And it's about how we change that with the mediation type so we can find a positive way forward for
Yeah.
both parties, rather than what's historically happened is one party almost feels pushed out
Yeah.
and has to leave. And I think in a larger organisation, people can move around. So
Yeah.
that's more helpful. But in a smaller organisation, the reality is that that's not possible. So it's how we forge that relationship
Yeah.
moving forward. So I think
Yeah.
that's another key area that we're going to have to upskill on for the
Yeah.
future and be a part of what we just deliver.
And that was like music to my ears then, Amanda. That was like the A plus plus answer to the
Oh, thank
question
you.
about, yeah. So and it's one of those ones where we try and educate people about mediation and nipping things in the bud early rather than going grievance route, etc.
Yeah,
As you said, nobody wins through a grievance route. It's so damaging for the two individuals or three or four who's involved, their families. People forget that families, they don't just go home from work and switch off.
switch
Then
off.
you've got
No.
the HR consultants involved, etc. So yeah, so absolutely echo there about the mediation support in an early place. I also like the bit where you kind of touched on, because I noticed it when I left the bank and went into the freelance world and then my own company, that actually there's a lot of good supportive people out there to go to if you need help, support. You're not by yourselves, that and people don't want anything back in return. It's
Mm.
just a nice kind of way that if there's an area that I'm not an expert in, I pull people in, vice versa, and they can either train me up or they have the work or work with a client. So I think that's really important about the future, about leaning on your stakeholder groups to kind of upskill
Absolutely.
yourself.
And I think it's recognizing that it's not a weakness, that we
Yes.
can't know absolutely everything. HR's in our title, but there's such a variety of aspects within HR that
Yeah.
I don't think any HR professional can say they know absolutely everything to the highest
Yes.
level.
Yeah.
I just do not think it's possible, because it is such a wide spectrum. But as you
Yeah.
say, to know who to contact when you're not sure,
Yeah.
is a real key strength, to
Yeah.
rather than trying to bumble along. I think
Yeah.
that's absolutely
Yeah.
crucial.
And I think what I've noticed today as well, Amanda, from your style, and that is about getting HR more business focused to say, how do they complement the organization? How do they strategically go for the future
Yeah,
rather than be reactive? That's definitely coming through about you in your HR practice, about trying to really work and strive to the future, more strategizing, which I think HR
absolutely.
definitely needs for the future.
Absolutely. And I think part of that is historically with managers is they're given the policies of how to deal with things, but not necessarily the training, learning, development to
Yeah.
actually embed those. So as a manager, when everything's going fantastically, being a manager is great. But actually, then
Yes.
when you've got a member of staff where there is a problem, it is tough. I don't think
Yes.
anybody likes dealing with a difficult, and I hate
Yeah.
to use the phrase, a difficult conversation, but
Yeah.
that's what it is. And people do shy away from it. They worry that they're going to make things worse by approaching it. And I've always said to management, but if you have a key fact that you can refer to in those meetings, that you can talk
Yeah.
through with the individual, so it doesn't look like you're plucking things out there.
Yes.
You can give concrete evidence, then it's
Yeah.
justified in what you're saying. And if you're
Yes.
saying it in a supportive way, where you're
Yeah.
then also saying, okay, well, what else can we do to help you?
Yeah.
It's putting that positive spin on
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
And you can't, well, I say you can't go wrong, but it is the best way to approach it rather than
Yeah.
sticking your head in the sand and hoping it will go away.
Yeah.
Because what
But
goes
that's
away
the
is
bit.
the rest of the team, isn't it? Because they get
Yes.
disgruntled that it's not being dealt with. And the danger is you lose
Yeah.
those team members, and the poor team member
Yeah.
that's struggling is still with you, and the situation hasn't
Yeah.
resolved itself.
And the bit there, the really, really good bit, a phrase I use is about leaning into it. So lean into the issue or the concern
Mm,
and actually doing it in a very professional way, but stick to your facts. Because where we see issues occur is where people use opinion a lot.
yes.
So we've seen it rather than they go with their policy and to say, let's just talk it through, let's have a look at where we're at. They use their opinion. So I've represented the bank at quite a few employment tribunals and it's one of those easy ones. If you stick to your policy or your kind of facts and that, you're on a better footing rather than going into the
Mm,
opinion world because that's where the
absolutely.
issues really start to happen.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that, Stephen.
So what would be the benefits? I think we can probably, what would you say the benefits of an organization having a more agile, futuristic HR function? What would be benefits to the organization?
I think the benefits of the fact where organisations are having to rapidly change themselves in the current
Yeah,
economic climate, it just gives that adaptability to work with the changing circumstances that they may be faced with. The evolving businesses that we have is such a dynamic workforce. We can flex in and flex out to support them as and when
yeah,
needed, meaning they're getting the right support
yeah,
at the right time.
yeah. And it's that flex, isn't it? So, but, people say agile working, adaptability, those kind of things. They're just really, really key or changeability in today's climate and world. And even kind of things that I think is taught us during a pandemic. Most people have had some building works done or something else, but actually prices were changing left, right, and centre for building goods and those kind of things. So you did need to learn adaptability, and that's in like the workplace as well. That whatever happens today may not be the same next week or the week after. But then how do you move and flex for the climate, isn't it?
I agree with you, but I think it goes back to what we were talking earlier. Although we have to be adaptable and circumstances can change relatively quickly, we still need to ensure that the communication and the engagement is
Yes.
there with the team, and that
Yeah.
managers shouldn't hide behind the fact that, well, because we're in a changing environment, we
Yeah.
can't communicate with the things, we don't know what's happening, because actually that causes even more issues. Even if you
Yes.
communicate to
Yeah.
and say, we're not sure what's happening at the moment, as soon as
Yeah.
we're in a position to, we'll update you. However you
Yeah.
want to sort of put that, by being open, even if you're open but can't give any more information, at
Yes.
least they know
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
engaging with them and not hiding
Yeah.
behind a wall to, as you were saying earlier, things then go through people's mind as to, have I got a job, have I not got a job, what's going to
Yes.
happen, and especially cost of living and all the other
Yes.
pressures that people are facing at the moment.
Yeah.
It's added stress, and you're not supporting the well-being of your team, which again is another
Yeah.
crucial factor.
Yeah.
So,
And it's that communication about honesty. I just really got this belief about treating people as adults. And if you haven't
mm,
got news, then as you said, let communicate and say, this is what we're working on at the moment. We come back with an update, those kind of things,
yeah,
rather than bury your head in the sand and just think it'll be okay. Because that's when human beings then feel gaps and then they get worried about kind of their home life, the concerns, those kind of
yeah,
things. But I've seen some
absolutely.
great organisations really communicating and there's loads of different methods now to do it, podcasts, push out notices. Technology can really help you do some really straightforward 2-minute comms, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, absolutely, and even if that comment to say there is no update, at least your team
Yeah,
know there is no update rather than radio
yeah,
silence. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And would you say there's any other benefits just for HR consultants? What would be personal for them adapting or changing for the future? So, like you as an organisation, what would be benefits of you more strategic, more working along the businesses, those kind of things? What benefits would it give to you Amanda?
I think for me, understanding what the trigger points are for the businesses, understanding what their issues are, helps me then focus on what I need to develop on more,
Yeah,
and how I can then in return support them, because HR is a kind of, forever changing
yeah,
platform. I mean, there are still some core elements, but I think one of the things is around employee well-being, and
yes,
and as things move forward with businesses, we can see where the pinch points are, and
yeah, yeah,
where the real issues are, to then work out how I need to flex to understand how I can
yes,
actually support them. And
yeah,
I think that's really important. And for me as a consultant, I have more flexibility as an individual, historically working 9 till 5 for a business. Well,
yes,
I know with the businesses I support, the business manager doesn't necessarily work 9 to 5. Well, they might
yes,
work 9 to 5, but then they're actually dealing with the other issues
yes,
in the evening.
yeah,
And for me, I'm quite happy to flex with that to an extent,
yeah,
because
yeah,
that also works for my personal situation, to
yeah,
flex in and out. Um,
yeah,
and I think it's just about finding that right balance, in all honesty.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it's that win-win, isn't it? So, like, a couple of weekends ago, I worked all day Saturday, and I loved it. Got loads of stuff done. I had some calls with clients on the Saturday because that's how they worked. That just shows about meeting people's needs,
Mm.
and also my own needs. And I'll take the time back when I need it and those kind of things. But I think the more adaptable and flexible you are to that organisation, the more you'll complement that organisation. And I'm not saying 24/7 be on the phone and all,
No,
but there's a balance, isn't there?
and I think you're absolutely right. It is about striking that balance, but
Yeah.
it shows your flexibility as well.
Yeah, yeah. And what would you say? I always get asked by people, being a bit nosy, but what's your personal development for 2023? What are you working on, or what's relevant to you?
Personal development. So I do like a podcast.
Yeah,
So I do listen to quite a lot of podcasts, just to kind of see new trends, what's happening,
yeah,
where the pressure points are, etc. I want to do mental health first aid training, is one
yeah.
of the things
Good.
I want to explore this year, and I want to understand more about neurodiversity in the workplace
Yes,
versus neurotypical, because that's something I'm experiencing now with some of the clients I deal with, is around what support they can put into place for
yes,
staff members. And I've got a fairly good understanding, but it would be
yeah,
useful to just get more
yeah, yeah,
detailed understanding around that. So I think they're my key areas
yeah,
this year.
yeah. And they would be relevant areas, wouldn't they? That if you think about it, in
I think so.
for supporting colleagues, supporting yourself, they're all relevant areas, aren't they?
Yeah, and I think for neurodiversity, I think some of this has really come to light since the pandemic. I think
Yes,
where we have experienced a workforce that can adapt and work more flexibly,
yeah,
for some people who are neurodiverse, that has been an absolute, I say, blessing, but it's given them an
yes,
opportunity to work in an environment where they feel far more comfortable in some settings. And
yeah,
it's about working with the business to make sure that the right support mechanisms are in place, because
yeah,
everybody is unique. Whether you're
yes,
neurotypical or neurodiverse, we all
yeah,
have our own desires, our own
yeah,
support mechanisms that we need, and it's working with individuals in the business to find out what they are and how they can best
yeah,
best be supported.
yeah. Yeah, and it's the bit there is all we want to do is be fair and give everyone a fair chance, isn't it? If you think about it,
Absolutely,
all we want
absolutely.
to do is set people up to win. Um, and definitely, I notice more and more organisations that are thinking, how do I set up people to win, are now becoming more inclusive, better culturally, more productive. Because everyone thinks it's, all the stuff we talk about is nice and fluffy, but it's not. It's about, there's a commercial lens that goes on the back of this. But we're definitely seeing
Absolutely.
people that really embrace supporting their colleagues are definitely more productive.
Yeah, and that just makes me laugh, because I think when I first started in HR, I can remember somebody saying to me, "Oh, HR's pink and fluffy."
Yeah, yeah.
And it's kind of, and I think, look, when I look back then, it wasn't, because so much was transactional.
Yes, yes,
And I'm not saying that now everything is pink and fluffy, but it is more around the support of your team, about
yes,
the employee well-being,
yeah,
about the engagement, etc., which
yeah,
is absolutely more strategic. But it is
yes,
that, not, I don't like the word soft skills, like almost that emotional intelligence,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
about how we get the most out of our team.
yes,
And that is the way HR needs to drive forward. So the businesses are
definitely.
cutting edge,
Yeah,
rather than that transactional slapping people down because they haven't done what they should do.
yes, correct.
There is a place for that,
Yeah,
but it is that emotional intelligence side, and how we can drive that
yeah,
forward is the biggest win, I think, for a
yeah.
business
No,
moving
spot
forward, to
on.
make them more competitive.
Yeah, and we always talk about the world I mean is the win-win relationship, rather than a company doing to a colleague. It's about win-win, and then we know that it'll be more productive, more engaging, and do you know what? You'll retain colleagues longer, etc.
Absolutely.
Rather than all the other stuff that goes with it. So, Amanda, I've loved chatting today, and it's flown
It's
by. So,
been
really,
brilliant. Thank you so much for having me today. I really
really.
appreciate it, Stephen.
So, how can people get hold of you or connect with you? What's the best way to reach out?
Okay, so I am on LinkedIn. So yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. I do post quite a lot on there. I'm
Yeah,
also on Facebook,
yeah,
and people can email me. My email is amanda.nicholls at hrsolvit.co.uk. And I'm more than happy to have an exploratory call with somebody if they just want to have a chat through as to
yeah.
some issues they may have, just to see whether that is something I can support them with. Then that, more than
Yeah,
happy to.
yeah. So I just want to say a huge, huge thank you for joining the podcast today. I thoroughly enjoyed it and learnt lots as well. So I would say connect with Amanda, as she said, through LinkedIn, Facebook, etc. Really have those chats with Amanda. But you've got someone here that's forward thinking, really wants to kind of, from a HR consultancy point of view, really push that strategy and work with her clients. So Amanda, thank you so much. I hope you
Thank
enjoy
you.
the rest of the day. I think it's a bit sunny for us today, so down on the
It
coast.
is
So
sunny. I might get
it
out for a run later today.
yeah, yeah, really good. But thank you ever so much. I really appreciate it. And you have a
Thank
lovely day.
you. You too. Thank you. Bye.